Greetings and salutations, loyal viewers of this channel. Today we are going to go over and dissect this phony outrage that is being leveled against Dasha Burns, who is an MSNBC or NBC journalist, for actually conducting a legitimate interview of John Fetterman, who suffered a serious stroke and obviously has severe medical limitations on what he can do, and has failed to disclose his medical records to the public. Now, what the media is doing, because this is a competitive Senate seat, is essentially pretending that Dasha Burns is somehow a disabled, anti-stroke victim, and just a bad person, for actually pointing out that John Fetterman has some serious medical problems and he's not being transparent about it. You can never be a journalist in the United States of America when it comes to the left wing, and now John Fetterman's medical condition is something that's completely off the table. And we're going to go to the Young Turks video because it's absurd, and it really goes to show you how bad the left will twist and lie to get their progressive darling into office, even though he doesn't seem like he can function. But before we get into this absolute insanity from TYT, from the left-wing media, we have a sponsor, so we're going to toss it to the sponsor and bring it back over here and talk about it on the other side. Have you ever heard of the term liquid gold? If not, let me explain. Liquid gold refers to a combination of two of the most powerful anti-aging ingredients out on the market into one product. Many health experts agree that combining these two ingredients is one of the best things that you can do to fight the visible signs of aging. And in the next minute, I'm going to explain to you how it all works. Liquid gold works by combining all the benefits of a multi-collagen powder with turmeric, and this specific blend actually offers 5 different crucial types of collagen and turmeric combined, so it can rejuvenate your skin from inside and out. And one of the best things about liquidgoldajw.com is that if you go over there and you want to try this out, you actually have a 60-day trial period. So if you don't like it, you can send it back. And for my audience members over at liquidgoldajw.com, you will get 51% off your order. That is unbeatable in terms of a deal. You can get it, try it out, feel the rejuvenation, the elasticity, that glow return to your skin, and if you're not 100% satisfied, send it back for a full refund. That's liquidgoldajw.com. See the pinned comment in the top of the description of this video.
John Fetterman was treated poorly, to say the least, during his interview with NBC News.
So let's be clear about something. John Fetterman was not treated poorly by Dasha Burns. That is not the case, and Kasparian is trying to frame it as a way to distract from the issue, but let me give you the big points of contention with John Fetterman up front to show you Anna Kasparian's unbelievable, embarrassing lies in order to back her guy against Dr. Oz. So, we know Fetterman had a severe stroke, and by the way, Fetterman was a bad candidate, and I would not have supported him prior to this stroke. He was not a good guy, and I think you should have voted against him, but he was at least functioning and able to talk, and I feel really bad for him. I feel bad for his family. I actually lost a relative to a stroke, and it was really heartbreaking. It was sudden. It was a total disaster, so I don't want to be one of those people that mocks his inability to talk, so I'm not going to do that, but there are severe consequences of the stroke that you can see on his ability to hear, on his ability to speak, and they're fully on display for us. But they weren't always fully on display, because it turns out John Fetterman actually had this stroke 4 days prior to the Democratic primary, and one of the things that the Fetterman team did was cover this up. They hid this from the public so you would vote for him in the Democratic primary. So Fetterman has been lying about this since it happened, thus bringing up an extra level of concern. I mean, check out this article from the day before the Democratic primary, where they're first reporting that Fetterman had the stroke. In this article, it even says, Fetterman's stroke explains why he missed campaign events on the eve of the primary election. Fetterman's campaign was initially vague about why he pulled out of events on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, saying that there was only a medical situation. And by the way, even then, he was saying that he would return to the campaign trail sometime soon, and he was on his way to full recovery back in May. It took him 2 full months to return to the campaign trail. So this is definitely a cover-up, this is definitely them hiding it, and this is definitely cause for concern. On top of that, one of the next things that people often say in Fetterman's defense is that, oh, don't worry about it, everything's a-okay, because John Fetterman's doctor says he's on track in a letter for his recovery protocol, so there's nothing for you to worry about. But the thing is, we don't have his medical records. We don't have actual information about what level of recovery is to be expected. So you could not be lying, say he's on track for the recovery protocol, but the standard which he will recover to is not back to normal. It's significantly further away from normal, and we don't know that because Fetterman and his team are hiding that. Now, you would expect, as the bare minimum of a journalist's job, for a journalist to be able to ask Fetterman in a rare interview, because he's dodging a bunch of interviews, about his medical condition, about his lack of transparency. But of course, since Fetterman has that magic D next to his name, all of a sudden, it's a totally uncalled for question. It's ableist. What, you hate the disabled? You're probably a racist against the disabled. How dare you? And they're probably going to get this NBC reporter fired over her actually doing her job in a legitimate way.
That interview was conducted by Dasha Burns, and she's now putting out a statement, kind of backtracking after she has received a flood of criticism for her ableist language and tone.
And it's not ableist to point out that a guy is not functioning in the way that he did, and he's been lying about it. This idea that you could label something as an ism in order to skirt the issue isn't going to fly with the people of Pennsylvania, and you deserve to lose, and you deserve for everybody to know that you have no credibility on any of these issues, because remember, the Young Turks sold t-shirts that promoted the idea that Donald Trump was in cognitive decline when he did that test where he had to name 5 words. They actually had them in the merch store, so they have no problem not only promoting baseless speculation on a public official's health, but profiting off of it. So the idea that Fetterman's stroke is off limits is insane, it's hypocritical, but what do you expect from the Young Turks? Honestly, what do you expect from the left-wing media, who have all, in a coordinated fashion, jumped on board this attack? I could have easily made this video about Philip DeFranco doing the same exact segment. I could have easily made this video about The View doing this exact same segment, because that's who these people are, total frauds and total liars.
I want to go to that first, because that's the latest in this story. As Aaron Rupar tweeted, MSNBC's Dasha Burns says she has spoken to stroke experts, and they say these are side effects that do not indicate any sort of cognitive impairment for Fetterman.
So the reporter has to backtrack because the left wing is viciously attacking her in an unprompted way based on the fact that she actually committed the sin of doing journalism when the subject of that journalism was in fact a Democrat. The stroke experts have not examined the person at hand. And obviously, when you want to make your case that this guy should be elected as a senator, you're going to find a quote-unquote expert that's going to side with you in that regard. So I don't trust this at all. I don't care whether or not he's in decline cognitively or not. The fact is, he is in decline. He does have a serious medical issue, and the voters of Pennsylvania should be made aware of that.
Now, why would she have to put that statement out there? Well, it's because of how she handled the interview and what she said prior to sharing the interview with Fetterman, who, of course, is running for a Senate seat in Pennsylvania. And it's important to keep in mind he's running against Mehmet Oz, who is a shell of a man who has no values, no principles, no real political ideology.
So in my last video related to Anna Kasparian lying for John Fetterman and attacking Dr. Oz, I pointed out that it's a strategy, and this was only after listening to Anna Kasparian go out of her way to not call Dr. Oz, for people to not call him by his proper title. Now remember, these are the same left-wingers that attack Ben Shapiro and anybody on the right for making fun of Dr. Jill Biden, who has a doctorate, she's not an MD, for demanding to be called that title. And the Young Turks title every single video with Dr. Jill Biden in it as Dr. Jill Biden because they're obviously on that team. But now they're doing this in such a way to delegitimize Oz. And by the way, I said in my previous video that Fetterman was smearing Oz for having Turkish citizenship. And a lot of you might have thought I was conflating what the Young Turks was doing with what Fetterman was doing. But understand there's two different coordinated strategies at play. They're not calling him doctor because they know doctors are trusted. That's a method to delegitimize him. But separately from that, the Fetterman campaign is playing up this dual loyalty, things that would be called obviously racist if Republicans were doing it, because of his dual citizenship. So those are two separate issues. And by the way, it's not just the Young Turks, it's a coordinated strategy. And one of the reasons why you know that is because Philip DeFranco also going out of his way not to call him Dr. Oz.
But I want to talk about Fetterman right now because he's in this extremely tight race with the Wizard of Oz. And but his Republican opponents and the captain of coup d'etat have still attacked his health.
Again, the reason I'm pointing this out is not because I'm obsessed with titles or credentials or anything like that. It's just something that you need to take note of when you're consuming media, of how they're framing the story or framing the candidates in a way that's either favorable or unfavorable. How people in the media will go out of their way to call somebody something that they're lesser known by to make you think they're less legitimate in your eyes. We all know, because this guy had a show called Dr. Oz, that he's a doctor, but the Young Turks, DeFranco, and I'm sure if you watch left-wing media across the board, have decided in a coordinated fashion that they need to delegitimize him because you trust doctors too much.
And is such an extreme narcissist that all he wants is the political power. None of the responsibilities that come along with it. Oh, by the way, his company did medical experiments on dogs that led to dogs dying. It's another important thing to keep in mind about this guy. But
is that an important thing to keep in mind about Dr. Oz, that he was affiliated with a company that did animal testing, and that animal testing was done on the dogs? Don't you remember that story about how the NIH, the organization that Fauci ran, did experiments on dogs that led to basically them torturing the dogs for absurd reasons? And that was treated as a total nothing, not covered by Anna Kasparian. She never took the Fauci candles out of her home after that. It seems like you're trying to front load this with poison pills before you go and deflect and deny what's going on with John Fetterman. And by the way, to the extent that the Fauci thing matters or the Oz thing matters, doesn't really bother me. I'm somebody who likes dogs all right. I don't know the full extent of either things, but I would be more angry about the thing that's happening within our government, because that's something that is being paid for by our tax dollars, than the medical experiments or whatever was being done in a company affiliated with Dr. Oz. By the way, also a bunch of companies also experiment on animals. Whether or not you have an ethical or unethical position, this still doesn't have anything to do with Fetterman's health, which is the issue at hand, and Anna Kasparian going out of her way to smear journalists to try to run cover for John Fetterman.
Nonetheless, last night, NBC News aired this interview between Dasha Burns and Pennsylvania Senate candidate John Fetterman. Both during and after the interview, Burns repeatedly questioned whether he'd be fit to serve. As you guys know, Fetterman unfortunately suffered a stroke. He is still recovering from that stroke. Based on medical experts who have weighed in on the matter, the timeline of his recovery is normal. He is doing well.
Yes, it is perfectly reasonable when somebody has a serious medical condition for you to speculate whether or not they'll be able to serve based on that serious medical condition. Now, Anna, again, being ultra weaselly right here, talking about how there are medical experts that have weighed in on the issue to say that his recovery timeline is normal, but the thing is, they haven't examined him, they haven't seen his medical records, because John Fetterman hasn't released the medical records because he's hiding them. So what do these experts know about anything? They have to watch from the video and speculate, and whether or not they're more educated in this category than the average person, that is still not a legitimate medical opinion, and everybody would tell you that, and people like the Young Turks would tell you that if they were speculating in a way that they didn't like.
But journalists and other stroke survivors are coming to Fetterman's defense after Dasha Burns did a hatchet job on him.
It's now considered a hatchet job to question John Fetterman's medical status after John Fetterman had a stroke 4 days before the Democratic primary and lied about his medical status, covered it up in order to win the Democratic primary. Now it's totally uncalled for. It's a hatchet job. Anna Kasparian, who teaches journalism, despite the fact that she's never been a journalist, is questioning an actual journalist who did journalism in this case. This woman might be totally garbage in every other regard, but this is the one thing that is definitely legitimate, and what they're mad at is that somebody on their team actually asked important questions that were valuable, and you're never allowed to do that. You must bow down to the Democrats, and this is the progressive darling John Fetterman, so you must suck up to him even more, otherwise Anna's going to throw a hissy fit like we're seeing right now.
Now, Burns and Fetterman spent a good chunk of time talking about crime in Pennsylvania and a bit of time talking about other issues, but the vast majority of Burns's questions were about Fetterman's stroke. And you also have to think about the backdrop here. The backdrop is Oz constantly viciously attacking Fetterman over the fact that he had a stroke. And of course, Oz, as a Republican candidate, has no problem using all sorts of disgusting ableist language in attacking him.
Again, note the strategy of not calling Dr. Oz Dr. Oz. And I will also add that Dr. Oz, being a cardiac specialist, somebody with some level of expertise, should have actually done a clever gambit related to Fetterman's stroke rather than just outright attack him. What he should have done is offer to look over his charts, offer to examine him, offer to give his medical opinion on Fetterman's status, because to the general public, that looks like something that you're doing in good faith, but it also has the dual impact of not only making you look good, but making you think about his medical status without getting defensive like some people get when there's an attack. So that's a strategy issue for Dr. Oz, maybe, although he's gaining in the polls. But again, this would all be well and good if it were a Republican. We all understand that, so I'm not even going to bother to make the hypocrisy point going forward.
Early on in the interview, Fetterman actually did a great job explaining that just because he has trouble hearing and speaking does not mean that he has any issues with his cognitive abilities or his reasoning. Okay, so let's take a quick look at that.
What has that recovery process been like? How has it changed your day-to-day experience?
It's everything. It changes everything. To be precise, I use captioning, so that's really the major challenge. And every now and then I'll miss a word. Every now and then, or sometimes I'll maybe mush two words together. But as soon as I have captioning, I'm able to understand exactly what's being asked. But even after the stroke, immediately after that, I was able to read everything and I haven't lost any memories or anything like that. It's just really the lingering issue that I have.
So I will say, after watching that portion of the interview, even though he did mush some words, even though he did fumble some words, the idea that his hearing is bad and that's why he needs the closed captioning and that's how he can respond is actually not a big issue. So in this portion of the conversation, which of course there's a reason why the Young Turks highlighted this portion of the conversation, John Fetterman looks pretty good. He has a little bit of an issue, but hearing loss is not something that precludes you from participating as a senator in the United States of America, in my opinion. Now, Fetterman's a terrible candidate regardless from that, but whatever, right there, good move on John Fetterman's part. But get a load of what Anna Kasparian does.
So you'll note that Fetterman has a screen right in front of him, and that displays captions of Burns's questions so he could read them. Now, following that question and his answer, Burns pressed Fetterman over and over again on why he hasn't released his medical records. Keep in mind, by the way, he has been incredibly transparent about his stroke, about his condition, about his recovery process. He has shared a letter from his doctor indicating that he's doing well, he's recovering well, but that's not good enough. When are we going to see your medical records? Where are your medical records?
Now, I've spoiled this by saying it over and over again, but John Fetterman has not been transparent. When you get a stroke 4 days before the Democratic primary and you cover that up so you can win the Democratic primary, that shows people that you are willing to hide negative medical information in order to win an election. So yes, it is a perfectly valid and legitimate question. Also, get a load of the irony of Anna saying that the doctor wrote a letter saying he should be fine to serve as president. Remember, they did stories about Trump's doctor writing a letter saying he would be able to serve as president. And they did pressure campaigns in order to get Trump to take a cognitive test by his White House doctor. And then they said that White House doctor was illegitimate. But now all of a sudden, if you get a letter, it's totally fine. No big deal. Nothing to worry about. Even though the speculation into Trump's health was unprompted, there was no incident like a stroke that was drawing attention, magnifying this issue. It's not like Fetterman's thing came out of nowhere. Now it's totally no big deal, and he's been super transparent. The way he transparently hid the fact that he had a stroke before the primary was so transparent. Aren't you proud of his transparency? I'm Anna Kasparian. I teach journalism in the UC system.
We've asked for your medical records. We've asked to have a conversation with someone from your medical team, to interview your physician. You've declined those requests. Why?
Well, I feel like we have been very transparent in a lot of different ways. When our doctor has already given a letter saying that I'm able to serve and to be running. And then I think you can't be any more transparent than standing up on a stage with 3,000 people and having a speech without a teleprompter and just being and putting everything and yourself out there like that. I think that's as transparent as everyone in Pennsylvania can see.
I thought that was a great answer.
Really, Anna? You thought that was a good answer? Seriously? You thought that he nailed it right there? You know that you're lying. You know that you're being dishonest, disingenuous. You know you would never extend this courtesy to the other side. In fact, we have evidence that you don't consider giving speeches in front of a crowd of people as proof of medical health. So why would you say that's a good answer? We can all see what you're doing, Anna. We can all see how embarrassing you are. Why don't you just say you want Fetterman to win, so even if he has to step down, hopefully a Democratic governor wins Pennsylvania, and you could do a special election because you don't want the Republican to get the seat for 6 years. That's the honest answer. That's what we can expect. You don't actually think that nothing's wrong with Fetterman. There's no chance of anything being off. There's a reason why he's hiding his medical records, because he doesn't want the public to see what's in them.
Lester, in small talk before the interview, without captioning, it wasn't clear he was understanding our conversation.
How is it not clear that he was understanding your conversation?
So notice right there that John Iadarola is double facepalming because he can't believe that this reporter is saying that in small talk without captioning prior to the interview, it wasn't clear he was understanding what was going on. And Anna's like, how was it not clear? You could see in the interview. Well, she was saying before the interview, Anna, prior to the interview, prior to what you can see when they were talking, she noticed something was off and she's communicating that, or as a lot of people would call it, maybe not you, I know you teach journalism, reporting that to the public, Anna.
I mean, we just saw portions of that interview where it's abundantly clear that he has no issues with his cognitive abilities.
Well, so I saw him in an interview, and I, Anna Kasparian, the teacher of journalism, can declare that it's abundantly clear that Fetterman has no issues with his cognitive abilities. Why are we even do anything related to medical records when we have Anna Kasparian, ace reporter, ace journalism teacher, to diagnose John Fetterman from an interview, even though this woman is describing what happened before the interview?
It would be like someone who had never met someone in a wheelchair. It was like, oh, you gotta explain this chair thing. Okay, I have follow-up questions about this chair thing. And then you report back to the anchor like, it wasn't clear that he could walk without that chair thing. That's what a disability is. Like, I don't know if she has only ever cavorted around with angelic beings who are perfectly fit in body and mind, but I'm gonna blow her mind right now. There are people who can't hear even as well as him. There are people who can't hear at all. There are people who can't see at all, who can't speak at all. There's a variety of disabilities.
Well, they're not
that
fit
doesn't
to serve.
mean that
they're not fit to serve, according to Dasha Burns. You know, if you might want to run for Congress one day, but you have a disability like blindness, you might be deaf, you're just not fit to serve. Sorry.
What if you're paralyzed?
I mean, no, but
well, I mean, come on, can you really serve if you can't walk? If you can't do a kip up, can you really serve?
Again, straw man after straw man, embarrassing point after embarrassing point. The issue isn't whether or not John Fetterman is disabled or will be disabled for the rest of his life. That is part of the issue. The issue is John Fetterman had a stroke. He's already shown a propensity to lie about the stroke. He's not releasing information related to the stroke, so we have no idea what level he's going to be operating on going forward, or whether or not he'll make a full recovery or any kind of recovery because they're covering up that information. If you're blind and you come in and you want to get votes and you say, I'm blind running for Congress, nobody's going to have a problem with that. If you have hearing issues, I got news for you. A bunch of Congress people and senators are old and they have hearing issues. The president probably has some hearing issues because he's old. Nobody seems to have an issue with that. We expect that. That's perfectly normal. When you're lying, though, and you require a machine to aid you and we don't know what's going on, that's the issue.
One of the greatest presidents, if not the greatest president in United States history, was a disabled president, FDR. Okay?
First of all, FDR is not one of the greatest presidents in the United States of America, and again, he covered up the fact that he had polio, and the American people should have had the right to know that he had polio. He went through his whole term lying and hiding the fact that he couldn't walk, which is why he wasn't asked questions about it, but again, he should have been asked questions about it, and FDR, not a great president. Sorry, Anna, your little dream of FDR-style Democrats is just nonsensical.
Her handling and her commentary, let's just keep it real, because that's what this is. While the media, including, outlets like NBC, they love to present themselves as like the standard bearers of fair and objective journalism, right? Mm-hmm. But she is, in the way she's handling this, injecting her opinion into this story.
Yeah.
She is communicating to the audience that she doesn't believe that he's fit to serve due to this temporary disability. And even if it weren't temporary, if we're dealing with someone who might need to read captions to understand the questions, whatever, for what's the word I'm looking for a longer period of time.
Sure.
That doesn't mean that they're unfit to serve. Some people have disabilities, but they might be great candidates, great leaders.
Yeah, that's right. Anna Kasparian, who is currently helming an opinion-based show, giving her unqualified opinion that is informed by her bias in favor of Fetterman, is saying, I can't believe this person gave her opinion. Again, this is just because you don't like her opinion, Anna. You're making stuff up in order to cover for Fetterman because you want him to win. Because not only is he a Democrat on the cusp of losing to a Republican in Pennsylvania, but he's also a progressive that you guys championed, even though he's a terrible candidate, he's a loser candidate, and this was before his medical issues.
Okay, I mean, we're really having this conversation right now?
Yeah, look, you saw him in the video. Yes, he needs to read the captions, and then once he's read the captions, he's
fine.
Perfectly, he's perfect.
He's
He's perfectly,
fine.
he's perfect.
He's
He's
fine.
perfectly, he's perfect.
He's
He's perfectly,
fine.
he's perfect.
The way that Anna says, he's fine, she's obviously trying to convince herself, and again, she just condemned the reporter for saying, opinion, you're giving an opinion, and here she comes with her unqualified opinion. Now, the Young Turks wraps this by reading tweets from unqualified people that are obviously in the Fetterman camp, want him to win the Senate race, like that's a normal thing. We're not going to go into that. I have to get out of here and actually make sure I can have time to edit this video, but I want to know what you guys think about this whole nonsensical situation down in the comments below. If you like this video, then show me by leaving a like. You can subscribe for more content. You can follow me on all my social medias. You could support me via the support links in the description box of this video. This has been me talking about Anna Kasparian and the Young Turks trying to simp for John Fetterman. Till next time.